Oh, hi everyone. Just gonna give you a chance to jump in. We are having our first live broadcast for our group in the Iris Radev MD platform and the Level Up Wellness community. This is also being broadcasted in a few different platforms. We have Global TV, our friends in Filipino Success Movement, and a few different channels. So I'm just going to give you a chance to jump in. And yes, warm welcome. So I will be speaking to you in English because we have an international audience. Currently, our group in the Level Up Wellness community has 14 nationalities. So these are birth countries. This is not someone who's immigrated, but this is actually nationalities. So we have people from Indonesia, Iran, we have people from the Philippines, of course, people from Canada, people from the US, people from Singapore, Taiwan, Switzerland. I believe we have from Peru and from Cuba as well. So we have a growing community. And this makes me excited because the advocacy that I'm trying to promote is reaching more people. And really, my goal is to help promote this concept of holistic wellness. And so today, our topic will be what our poll results showed as the number one or the most requested. I gave out a poll in my community, the Level Up Wellness community, and the result of that was a majority of people opted for this particular topic, which is the holistic wellness audit. So today we're going to be talking about holistic wellness. So for some of you, this may be an altogether new concept. It's something that I think not a lot of people know about, even in our circle, in our circle in traditional medicine. It's not something that a lot of my fellow physicians would really practice, I would say. It requires currently like a specialized form of training or interest in the field for someone to actually utilize the strategy when they're dealing with their patients, or the approach when dealing with patients. So a lot of you, perhaps, if you're not my patient, a lot of you perhaps have not had the chance to talk to your own healthcare provider about the holistic concept of your health. So let's start with definitions first. When we say holistic, the word speaks for itself. It tells you about the root word, right? It's whole. It's the wholeness. So holistic is taking into account the person as a whole person. And the context of health is pretty much similar to WHO's definition, which is that health is not really just primarily the absence of disease, but it's a state of well-being in key aspects. So that includes your physical, which is in the traditional sense, that's the most common thing we look at. But it also includes your emotional, your mental, and of course, there is the spiritual aspect to it. So that is looking at health in a more holistic, more total way, right? It's in medicine, it's like the gestalt, like looking at all the small things that make up the whole. And then there's the audit. So today we're going to do an audit. So mainly we're going to be doing an inspection. So it's almost going to be like a workshop. So I encourage you to get yourselves pen and paper. You're going to do this together with me to make the most of this session, to take away from this session and learn a lot from it. Then it's really important to do the application. And the way that you're going to apply it is you're actually going to do the exercise with me as we go along. So go and get your pen and paper and really put in the time, because I think these maybe next 20, 30 minutes that you're going to spend with me is a worthwhile investment to just really have this zoomed out snapshot view of how your health really stands. Okay, so I'll give you a moment. I'm going to give myself a drink of water. All right, let me see who's here first before we start. Let's have a look. I'm going to greet people who are here. Marge. Hi, Marge. Good evening. Marlene. Hello. Thank you for tuning in. Janelyn. Hello. I think whoever this person is didn't give permission for Facebook to use their name. That's okay. Hello, Facebook user. Marge is here. Jovi is here as well. I hope some of my patients are here as well. And we have from YouTube, Tuna. Hello, Tuna. We have Mitzi. Hello, Miss Mitzi. Alpha Noel is also here from Hong Kong. Thank you for watching. And we have, oh, there we are, one of my patients. Hi, Bernadette. Hello. How are you doing? Luel is also here. Good morning. Good evening. Jasmine is here from Nanaimo. Hi, thank you. Thank you, Jasmine. She's not my patient, but she's from here locally. So Nelvin is also here. Hi, Nelvin. Faith, hello. Also in Canada, hello. And Mary Grace is also here. Hello from Utah. Hi to our friends in the US. And we have Zian. Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm turning 43 this year. Thank you for asking. And we have Joe. Joe is here. Hello, Miss Joe. And Ruth is here. Ruth, hello. We have Nath. Another learning day, hopefully, right? Mr. Styles Green, hi. Good to see you here. And from Pepsi Cola, oh yeah, I give talks to Pepsi people. Hello, thank you very much for your support, Pepsi. Okay, and Miss Cruz Erda. Okay, so thank you for joining me. I do appreciate your time. I know time is valuable. It's a resource that when you spend it, you can't take it back. So we better make it worthwhile. So today we're going to talk about doing an inspection of where you're at when it comes to your health. So if you've been a follower of mine in different platforms, you know that I always talk about the concept of having this well-rounded, right? Like this all-inclusive way of looking at things. And so today, this is going to be our guide, right? So I always talk about these things, the physical aspect of wellness, there's the mental aspect of wellness, the emotional part of it, and also the spiritual. So if you look at the overlap and you see that lily or lotus leaf, if you see that, then that overlap, what we call like a sweet spot, right? The sweet spot, when all these things come together and are taken into account, that is where you want to be. Because in the end, you know, if one of those things are not in alignment, they're completely out of sync, then what happens is disease states, right? Disease. So we're going to look at those aspects one by one. And I really want you to, with your pen and paper, as honestly as you can, really write down your answers and have a reflective moment. You don't have to show it to anyone, right? It can be completely private, that's okay. But the important thing is the honesty. The honesty to say to yourself that, yes, right now, this is where I'm at. But obviously, with this awareness, and if you see that it can be better, then the goal is to get you to that point where you are optimally functioning. And in that way, you can say to yourself that you're optimizing your health, right? Because all these things, all the four aspects affect your health in many ways, many interconnected ways. It affects your capacities, your function, your vulnerability to disease, right? All these things affect, and they're not just isolated things, right? As you saw in our model here, these things are all interconnected, right? There's no isolation. There's always going to be an overlap. So we'll start off with the physical aspect. So we have here, let me just remove this part here. Give me a moment. How am I going to remove this? Okay, I'm trying to remove the comment. Okay, there we are. So we're going to start off with physical well-being, because physical is really the first, like most obvious, most common. This is usually the thing that if we feel something's off in our physical aspect, we usually go to our doctor. So in all honesty, for question number one, how often do you eat a diet rich in whole, non-processed food? So meaning food that's not, ready-made, not microwave ready, right? Not in a box, like food in its natural form. So here you have a rating, right? You have this rating, 0 to 5. So give yourself an honest rating. How do you rate yourself? 0 to 5, how often do you eat a diet rich in non-processed food? So if you're doing it all the time, then you give yourself a 5. If you are kind of in the middle, then between 2 to 3. And if you're completely eating processed food, then you're going to give yourself either a 0 to 1, right? Depends. So that's the first item. Second item, how often do you exercise for more than 20 minutes? And this is per day. So remember, I always tell you regarding this physical activity, the recommendation is to do 30 minutes a day, moderate intensity exercise, 5 days a week at least. You can do more if you want, but at least 3 to 5 days a week, depends on the source that you're looking at. So how would you rate yourself with this question? Are you doing it 5 days a week? Then you give yourself a 5, right? If not, then you can do, depends. Like if you are, let's say you're active, you're doing some bit of walking, then do that twice a week, then you can give yourself a 2, right? And question number 3, how often do you eat colorful fruits and vegetables? In the morning, I did a broadcast and we talked about this list, right? You've seen this in my groups. You've seen me post this, and the green part here are really all the food that we recommend that you eat most of. And if you notice in the green part of the carbs, these are mostly vegetables. So above ground vegetables, variety of colors, right? So there's greens, and then there's yellows, and of course the nightshades like eggplant, right? And so that question there, how often do you eat colorful fruits and vegetables? Give yourself a rating. So 0 to 5. And yeah, just be honest about it, right? Don't give yourself a rating of what you think it should be, but what you're actually doing. So this audit is really about what you're currently doing, what your current state is, not the theoretical of where you want to get to, right? So this is an honest view of where you're at. So give yourself an honest rating. Okay, so if you've done that, then now let's go to the next. So how often do you get good quality sleep, at least 7 hours at night, and usually within that circadian rhythm time, which is the time when it coincides with our hormones, with nighttime. So usually I would say around 10 p.m. all the way till maybe 5 or 6. So that's going to give you, so if you go at 10, you can wake up at 5, that gives you 7 hours. So that's pretty much my kind of average myself, because I either wake up at 4 or 5, I go to bed either 9, 10. The latest would be maybe 10:30 if I'm doing something, driving my son to practice. So then it'll be a later night for me, but usually that's the circadian time frame for me for sleeping. So in all honesty, in the 7 days a week, Where would you rate yourself in terms of getting this good quality sleep, right? Good quality. You're not waking up in the middle and you're not having a hard time sleeping, falling asleep, right? So, what's your rating for yourself? And then the fifth, how often do you wake up feeling refreshed and energized from that sleep? How often is it that when you wake up, you feel so fresh, right? So full of life. Like, you don't need to hit the snooze button, right? Like you can spring out of bed. So, how often does that happen for you in a week? So, give yourself an honest rating, and you can now put like a line around it. We're going to get to the next bit. So, number six, how often do you make time to relax or take a short nap? So, either relax or take a short nap, less than 40 minutes usually, because 40 minutes more than that, it will throw off your circadian rhythm at night. So, how often do you make time to relax or take a nap? Give yourself this scale. A lot of us are very, very busy, right? We're so busy at work, so busy with life at home. We barely get that quiet time to really just relax, do nothing, right? Enjoy the moment. So, how often does that happen for you? Then the next item, so give yourself a rating. How often do you engage in stress reducing activities? So when we say stress reducing, this does not include TV and screen time, because these things are more like escape mechanisms, right? You're not really reducing stress, you're escaping. So you scroll, you watch, you're not really thinking, right? So when we say stress reducing activities, these are things like taking a walk. These are things like going to the park, going out in nature, maybe taking a long bath, you know, maybe reading a book, just relaxing, candlelight, maybe getting a massage. So these are things. So the difference between screen time and watching TV versus actual stress reduction is with the stress reducing activities, you're optimizing your health. You're not really optimizing your health when you're scrolling through, right? Your phone, or when you're just watching. So, stress reducing activity are the things that help optimize your health and reduce stress. Okay. It can be yoga, right? Tai Chi. It can be running. Some people run to de-stress. Some people swim. Every person's different. So, how often do you do your bit of activity that helps you reduce stress? And the next one, so still under physical, how often do you spend time out in nature? So, this is a specific question. And there is science behind this, because we know that people who actually spend time out in nature doesn't have to be, if you're in the city and you're too far, even at the back, right? Like the backyard where you have some plants, or just walk along your neighborhood where there are some trees and you can get away from the concrete. That's already considered nature in at least, the urban setting. But if you're lucky and you live near in a rural place, or it's easy for you to get somewhere where there's nature, then how often do you do that? What rating can you give yourself? And again, be honest, right? And the next part is, how often do you take time to breathe and be mindful? You know that I always talk about mindfulness, you've seen my latest post. Some of you, right? If you haven't, please check it out. It's a definition of mindfulness and what it can do for you with supporting journals there. So, how often do you actually take the time to just be, right? To ground yourself to the breath, be mindful of what's happening, being in the present moment. How would you rate that? If this concept is completely new to you, then maybe you're not doing it at all, right? And that's okay. That's okay. This is the purpose of the audit. It's really to give you awareness. It's not here. We're not here to judge you. on what you're not doing right now, but to really help you so that moving forward, you can address these things and optimize your health. Now, that's the last part for our physical. Or no, we have one last thing here. How often do you feel healthy, strong? Oh, this is redundant. So how often do you feel healthy and strong? So give yourself 0 to 5. How often can you say that you're feeling your best, right? How often do you feel that? So now maybe take the time to total the score, and you don't have to type it in, you can keep it to yourself. So obviously, the most optimal state here would be a score of 50. Again, this isn't an exam, right? There's no right or wrong. This is simply an awareness. This is an awareness exercise. It is an inspection, it's an audit, right? And so what we're doing here is getting real. So whatever your score is, it's okay if you want to share it with the people. It's okay if you want to keep it to yourself. Whatever works for you is fine. Okay? So 50 is the optimal. Obviously, the least optimal is 0. If you're not hitting any of those parameters, then you're going to get a lower score. But it's good to know where you're at because it'll help you optimize your health later on. So now, moving forward, we're going to go to, so we talked about the physical aspect of it, right? The physical wellness. Now we're going to go to the next section, which is mental. So mental wellness. Again, rating scale 0 to 5. The first one, how often do you take time to improve your mindset? So for some of you who have been long-term followers of mine from last year when I started my platform, you know that this is one of the core values, right, of my platforms, both in the Filipino success movement as well as the Iris Radev MD. I'd always share with you posts about mindset. We talk a lot about improving our mindset. It's because usually the things that you do, the emotions that you feel, start from the thoughts that you have. So the thoughts dictate what you will do and how you will feel, right? They're a triangle, they're interconnected. So it's really, really important to invest and improve this important part because it affects the other parts. It'll affect the way you want to do things. It will affect the way you respond to things. It will affect eventually the way you feel, right? The emotions that you feel. And this is why a lot of the work that we do with mental health disorders, the mood disorders, right? Depression, anxiety, it really starts with the thoughts. You cannot isolate thoughts from the emotions and from the actions. They're all, these things are connected. They're a triangle, right? And so, important thing to know. So honestly, if you rate yourself right now, how often do you take time to improve your mindset? 0 to 5, right? If you're always tuning into our channel and really soaking up all the inspiration and motivation and applying them daily, then probably you'll get a higher score, right? Not to be boastful about it, but in our platform, we do have a really supportive community. And these are people who have the same mindset, right? The mindset to level up, to actually be better, to make more, to find more meaning, right? It's a mindset thing. So the next item in our emotional wellness would be, mental wellness is how often do you make time to learn new things that will help you improve mentally? So here we're talking about new skills, like, for example, communication skills, right? Mental flexibility skills. So things, life skills, soft skills, skills that don't get taught in school. How often are you learning those things? How often are you learning how to connect better with another human? right? These are the things. They don't teach you that in school. There's no class, there's a communication class, but there's no connection 101 class, right? There's no such thing. There's no empathy class. There's no compassion class. There's no kindness class. But these are the things that will help improve your skill set, your mindset, right? Your mental health. So these are things that are not being talked about. They're not obvious. They're not mainstream, right? They're not. And so I don't expect that many people will get a really high score here. Truth be told, I don't think so. But again, not to say that it can't improve. It certainly can. Under mental wellness as well is memory. So how often does it feel easy to remember things? Are you getting forgetful? Or are you still pretty sharp, right? How's your memory? And then number 4, how often do you make time to participate in things you enjoy doing? So in our very busy lives right now, we tend to be so busy with so many things, we barely really find the time to do the things that make us happy, right? The things that are important to us, the things that bring us joy, right? As Marie Kondo usually says with the organizing, right? Does it spark joy? It's the same thing here. To cultivate your mental wellness, you have to be putting in the time to do the things that you actually enjoy, the things that spark joy for you, the things that you find meaning in. So, what are you rating yourself for this particular aspect? So, go ahead and write your score down. And then number 5, how often do you feel that you're mentally alert and sharp? That you are right on the ball, right? You have this good concentration and focus. A lot of us, again, get caught up in so many thoughts, right? You're lost in your thoughts that you fail to actually focus on what you're doing right now. So a lot of people will say that you're, like you're kind of, your head's in the clouds, right? You're not alert. You're unable to focus. So how would you rate yourself? And then moving on to the 6th part of the mental wellness, how often do you take a vacation or holiday breaks to recharge? So how often does that happen for you? I know it's quite challenging right now because of the pandemic. Most areas are in lockdown, but if you are able to, how will you rate yourself here? How often are you taking mini breaks, right? Even just, so in today's current situation, even just a staycation, right? Where you don't really busy yourself with work or other concerns, but really just taking the time to have a mini vacation, even a staycation. So give yourself a score there. And the next item, how often do you disengage and leave pressures behind at the end of the day? Do you take them to sleep with you? Do you constantly ruminate? So ruminate, that's a word that's good to know, right? Rumination is this act of chewing on things. So rumination, it comes from the word ruminant. So these are cows. These are animals with 4 or so stomachs. And so what they do is they eat the grass, for example. It goes to the one stomach, it goes back up, and then they regurgitate it and they have to chew it again. So a lot of us, especially when you have depression and anxiety, you will tend to do this. You will be in bed and then you keep regurgitating the thoughts of the day, right? You keep thinking about what happened and you keep, like analyzing. So you're ruminating. So how often can you leave those pressures behind, right? So give yourself a score here, an honest assessment of where you're at. And the next one is, how often do you have confidence in your ability to address challenges in your professional and business life? So are you feeling confident that you're able to take on these challenges? All of us have challenges, right? There's no one who has a perfect life, right? And even more like a perfect like business or professional life. It's all challenging. Like for me, it's usually, tons of paperwork, right? Sometimes for me, I tend to sometimes work like long hours. Patients need me all the time. So how often are you able to deal with those challenges in your work, right? And then the next one, I think it's the last one for our mental bit, is how often are you able to set limits at work? So, or before that, there's number 9, find a sense of meaning and enjoyment in your work. So this is very common right now. A lot of people are getting burnt out, not only from the pandemic, but also all the pressures that's happening with the pandemic and work, right? And so a lot of people no longer find enjoyment in what they're doing. So give yourself an honest score here. Are you still enjoying your work? Right? Are you getting, can you give yourself a 5, or are you totally not enjoying what you're doing? And the final one, which we mentioned earlier, was how often can you set limits at work? So are you bringing work at home? Are you working through the night, right? And are you unable to enjoy your family because you're working all the time? I used to do this before, but I just found it very, very counterproductive and very detrimental to my mental health. So since then, I've really set a firm like guideline for myself that there is a limit. Most of us, we like what we're doing. Certainly, I'm dedicated to my work, but there is a limit, right? Because if I allow it to intrude too much in my life, then what's going to happen is I'm going to burn out. And in that way, I won't be able to take care of these patients. So there's always a limit. So how often are you able to do that yourself in terms of your work? Are you always saying yes to the boss, right? And are you not having that time for just, to back off a little bit? So ask yourself and give yourself your rating for that particular aspect. So now moving on, we've talked about physical, mental, and now we're going to talk about the emotional bit. So emotional, give yourself in the scale a score of how often do you feel that you can face adversities with confidence. So adversities are challenges or problems. How often is it that when you're faced with a problem that you can really face it with confidence, that you don't feel helpless, right? Because a lot of us, we kind of double over when we're faced with a problem or challenge, especially if you're caught in the depression, anxiety cycle already, you tend to really kind of like cocoon, right? You feel like you're so overwhelmed, you can't deal with it. And so you just tune in and cocoon, and you don't want to be dealing with the problem. So how often do you find yourself confident to deal with those challenges? The next one for emotional is how often do you feel emotionally stable on a daily basis? So how often do you find that your moods don't swing too high, too low, right? That you are just in a stable, it's not perfect, right? It's not perfect, but at least it's just like small undulations. It's not like big waves, right? If you're going through that, then that's bipolar and you'll need help for that, right? So how often do you feel that you're able to keep a stable hold on your emotions? The next one is how often do you feel that you have a dependable person who listens to you? This is quite important in emotional wellness because if you've seen my videos, you've heard me talk about the concept of emotional wellness in the context of our support systems, right? Our relationships. The more support systems we have, the more resilient we can become in terms of adversities, like when we're faced with problems in life, when we are given challenges, then the more that we can face them when we have a solid support system. So give yourself your rating there. That fourth one for emotional will be how often do you get enough social time with people who make you happy? So this is, again, this is part of that relationship kind of aspect of the support system, right? So the people who make you happy, how often can you actually spend time with them? These are perhaps people in your core group. So this is your main family, like your children, right? Your husbands. I know it's a little bit challenging if your children are growing up or grown up. Many times they have a life of their own and they don't want to spend too much time with you. And of course, you miss them. I hear this a lot from some of my patients who are like empty nesters. Their children have grown up out of the home. They miss them so much, right? If you have a spouse who's working all the time and you don't see them, then that limits your time with them. So, how often are you spending that precious time with those who really make you happy? So, give yourself a rating there and be honest. And then the next one will be, how often do you participate in group activities with people who share a common interest? So, again, this is pretty limited right now because of the pandemic. But we fortunately have technology. So, although technology, if you use it in a maladaptive way, in the wrong way, then it can be both friend and foe, right? It can be a friend in terms of finding people with similar interests. So, like, for example, this group, if you're part of this group, this is a group of people who want to optimize their health. They're concerned about eating healthy, right? And so it's a community. And so, in this way, it's it's a great use of technology. But on the other hand, you can also easily go down the rabbit hole of technology when used in the wrong way. So you have to really learn how to balance, really learn how to consume, right? How to consume all the information that you're seeing on social, right? Make sure that you're only consuming the information that'll help optimize your health. So, for example, being part of a supportive group, a group of like minded people. And the next part would be, how often do you have supportive family and friends close by? So, again, I think this is very similar to this one here, emotionally a dependable person and also social time with people who make you happy. But this one is specifically asking for family and friends close by. So, give yourself a rating there. And then, how often do you have a dependable person who listens to you? So, someone that you can really trust. Give yourself a rating there. How often do you have the ability to comfortably say no, right? Because again, as we've said, we have to protect our time as well. Because in these times when we are flooded with so many things to do, if we want to take care of our wellness, we will have to limit the time so that we can focus on the things that matter to us. Things like exercising, being mindful, right? Spending time with people. So that will mean if you're saying yes to those, then you'll have to say no to others. So how comfortable are you? Are you in saying no? So that's an important piece. But this is in the context of, because you want to take care of yourself, right? Not you're going to say no and then you're not going to do anything about the time that you have, right? So it's about productivity, using the time efficiently. And then, how often do you do something fun with family or friends at least once a week? So, again, fun, right? It's important to laugh, have fun, do something joyful. So, give yourself a rating there. And finally, how often do you feel comfortable asking for help when you need it? So many of us, especially if we don't have that strong support system, what tends to happen is we keep it all in, right? We say, oh, I'm fine, I'm okay. How are you? I'm okay, I'm fine. But you need help, but you can't get yourself to ask for help. And it's coming from not having that perhaps close enough connection, maybe not having someone you can really trust, right? Or maybe having that wrong sense that if you do ask for help, that can be perceived as weakness. So, how comfortable are you in asking for help? So that's the bit about our emotional. So again, for those who are late jumping in, we are talking about the holistic aspect of health. So far, we've talked about physical, we've talked about mental, and then emotional. And the last bit is spiritual. So spiritual, I just want to make this clear because I know that few people here, we don't all have the same faith and belief systems. And that is okay. So when I say spiritual, it's really in the context of believing in something greater than yourself, believing in something higher, believing in contribution, kindness, compassion, purpose. These are all within the spiritual context. Okay, so you don't have to be a particular religion for this to apply to you. You may have no religion, but you believe in the principles of kindness. That's spirituality as well. Or you may have a faith system, but you don't practice it actively. That's also fine. It's the action, right? The action speaks louder than words. So, spiritual aspect, let's have a look. How often can you express yourself creatively? So this may be a surprise for some of you, but creativity is actually a reflection of spirituality because if you think about it, your being a creator is a gift from the creator, right? It's your innate gift, your special talent. You're given this potential for creativity by the creator. And so, how often you express that is an expression of your spirituality because you are then expressing your gifts, right? You are then making use of your gifts. So, that's the spiritual aspect. And the second one, how often do you feel and give gratitude on a daily basis? So, again, this is something that we talk about a lot. Grateful people tend to be happier people. The brain cannot be in two places at once. So, you can't be really unhappy, blaming things, and at the same time, you're grateful, right? So, it's one or the other. So, if you are grateful, then you can't be at the same time, feeling so bad, right? And the more that you practice gratitude, the more that you see the beauty in life. So that's just really a fact, right? The grateful people tend to see more beauty in life. So how often do you feel grateful? How often do you do that to give and feel gratitude? So give yourself an honest rating. And then, how often do you find meaning in life, even during difficult times? So, you're facing a challenge right now, for example, and how often do you still find meaning in the life that you're living? That in spite of the problem, you know that there's more to it than problems. So, how often do you feel that? And give yourself a rating. And then the next one is, how often do you take an interest in or find joy in the world around you? So, how often are you interested in finding beauty around you? So, give yourself a rating there. And then the fifth is, how often do you have hope that things will get better? So, how often do you find yourself self hopeful? So, give yourself a rating there. And then number 6, how often do you feel that you are part of an integrated whole, that you're not just living for yourself? We tend to be kind of very self-centered many times, and it's not wrong, right? It's not wrong to be that. But when you start to have the awareness that you're part of one whole thing, which includes, the universe and nature and other people, then you tend to be less self-absorbed. A lot of people think that if they have problems, that's the end of the world. It's because it's too much self-absorption. But when you start to realize that you're part of a bigger whole, then you tend to realize that your problems are not really so much of a big deal, right? And so how often do you feel that? How often do you feel that the world does not revolve around you, right? And last two questions, how often do you take time to remember? How often do you remember to make your dreams and goals a priority? So in my platform, I always talk about this because I know that many people because of all the problems and challenges they face, they've kind of given up on their dreams. They've kind of given up on what they used to want to become when they were children. They kind of, life's too hard, right? And so they've lost track of their goals, their aspirations, their dreams. And so my message really is to tell people that you shouldn't, right? The dreams and aspirations should not go away just because you're having problems. So keep track, keep your eye on the prize. So how often, again, that's the 8th question, how often do you remember to make your dreams and goals a priority? Are you doing that every day? Once a month, maybe? Once a year, every New Year's resolution? So my suggestion is it has to be on your agenda daily, right? You have to keep track of where you're going. You are the captain of your own life ship. There's no other captain here. You don't allow the waves of life to just get you wherever it takes you, right? You can steer. You can steer your own ship. Without your goals and without keeping your eye on the prize, on your dreams and aspirations, you're just gonna drift. But with your goal in place and your daily affirmation of these goals, then you know that you can steer your ship, right? And that's really one of the main things that I advocate for in my platform. Have goals, have aspirations, have dreams, right? And so if you listen to me daily, maybe if you watch some of my videos, then you'll keep track. And then how often do you feel that you have a higher purpose, something bigger than yourself? Purpose, calling, vocation, right? How often do you feel that? Is that something that you feel sometimes, never, all the time, right? So give yourself a rating there. And finally, how often do you have a contribution to make to the world? Or how often are you contributing? How often are you serving? It doesn't have to be monetary. And I always tell my followers this, it does not have to be a big monetary amount. It can be as simple as volunteering for a shelter, simple as picking trash, right? That's contribution. You're contributing to environmental wellness. It can be as simple as a smile. You're contributing to making another person's day better. Sometimes you smile at a stranger, you don't know what they're going through. Your smile may just have saved that life, right? If that person is contemplating suicide, your smile, your kindness, your warmth could be making that necessary small spark in that person to start hoping again, right? So that's contribution. So how often are you making that? So those are your rating scales. So again, we talked about physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. If you're interested to get that, I can give you a copy. Maybe I'll put that in my group, okay? And you can have a copy. And what you can do for that would be to do an assessment, maybe monthly or 3 months down the road. Again, today's inspection is more of an awareness exercise. It's to give you a bird's eye view, right? A zoomed out way of looking at things, being honest with yourself, and knowing that, okay, so that's where I stand. And because these things, they can affect your health in terms of symptoms, in terms of disease states. So we know that, for example, stress, right? I gave you a post about stress. If you're completely imbalanced, so let's say your score is like really low. So we have 4 items, right? So this is essentially a 200 point rating scale. 200, right? Because there's 50 in each aspect. We have 4 aspects, so 200. So let's say you're scoring, pretty low. Let's say you get maybe 50 or less. So that means that you need to tweak a few things to really optimize your health. right? And in a few months, by being aware of this and doing something about it, then in a few months, you can do a re-evaluation and see if you're actually improving. Because, it's one sense to learn, it's one way to learn about this and not apply it, right? I always tell my followers, when you learn something, the application is what's important, right? The knowledge is like just the beginning, the starting phase. But if you don't apply it, then the point is moot. There's no point, right? And so my intention with this session today is for you to get to apply what you've learned today. And that application is really take what you've learned about yourself, about your state of holistic wellness, and try to find ways to fill in the gaps, to meet and optimize so you get to that 5, right? The 4 or the 5. Again, it's not going to be perfect, but there's certainly a way to get to the higher scores. And this is the goal of my various platforms. I talk about those ways to get you optimized in the physical, right? With our low carb, our exercises, our nutrition, fasting, with our emotional, right? The way we connect with our relationships, with our mental, our skill set, right? Those things, the way that we think about things. And finally, our spiritual purpose, right? The contribution. What contribution are you making to the world? So there are strategies. Once you know where you're lacking a bit, then you can play catch up later, right? Because these things impact health. As I always say, I mentioned this. If you're interested to learn more about this, I have talked about this extensively. I do have a book, so it's available on Amazon, and I talk about these principles extensively. I just want to share with you this concept that you can think about each aspect as like a bank account, right? There's a unique thing about these bank accounts. These bank accounts have no limit in the amount that you can put in it, but every day it auto depletes because you have to pay the bank, right? When you're putting in your money in the bank, you do have to pay it. So every day it auto depletes. So you have to be doing something to fill the particular account, right? And so you have the 4 accounts here. So those 4 accounts, you have your physical, your mental, emotional, spiritual. Ask yourself daily, and I do this myself, obviously. That's why I've written a book about it. Ask yourself daily, how am I topping up on each of these aspects today? Because, like it isn't just the physical thing, right? Like, am I eating correct today, right? It's great if you're paying attention to nutrition, fasting, and all that. But also, how much are you exercising, right? How much are you able to say no to work? How much are you able to connect, right? How much are you contributing? So if you look at it that way, it's more holistic. And in that way, you are less prone to experiencing disease states. Because honestly, 90% of the things we see in practice are mind-body connection syndromes. Things like diabetes, right? High blood pressure, depression, anxiety, peptic ulcer, all these things, right? All these body aches, joint pains. It's just really an imbalance of any of the aspects, right? So if you're overdoing your physical work, obviously you're going to suffer back pain, shoulder pain, right? Elbow pain. It's all about balance. And that is why one day, I really just, from the things that I've learned myself, the work that I did on myself, then I did come up and I wrote this book. So if you're interested, it's on Amazon. You can get it in Kindle form. You can get it as a hard copy. It talks about these things a lot. It talks about the holistic aspect of health. It talks about the bank accounts. It talks about the strategies that you can do to optimize those things and really get into that best state of yourself, of your health, so that you're able to live meaningfully, right? It isn't just, we shouldn't just be passing in this life kind of like yeah, hi, I'm just a passerby. It should be meaningful, right? And so that's really my advocacy. And to make it meaningful, it takes a few small parts to be moving together in harmony. And this illustration really, it's the harmony, right? It's the harmonious movement of these small parts. So I think I'm going to end here. We did almost what we did an hour. Wasn't expecting to go that long, but we did an hour. And yeah, stay tuned. I'm going to be coming on here live again to talk about each of the aspects. So today was more like a primer, an overview, and each time I go live on here, it's to talk about something that will add value to each of those aspects for you. Okay, so I thank you for your presence. I thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. And have a good night. Have a good rest of the day. Okay, bye for now.